this is the button in a square stitch scarf pattern, and I picked this particular stitch pattern because I think it's very important when you're knitting a scarf that the fabric look good on both sides, and this one does. Hey, it's Denise from loomhat.com. Let's jump right into your supply list. So you're gonna need a loom with at least 32 pegs, 307 yards of worsted weight yarn, loom hook, a crochet hook, scissors, and I highly recommend that you use stitch markers for this project. Since you guys always ask, let me go over my stitch marker placement. So I'm going to start with one single knit stitch as my edge, and then I'm going to place markers for the 10 stitch pattern. So on the first peg and the 10th, I'm going to repeat those 10 stitches 3 times. So you see where I have color coded with my stitch markers, and then I'm going to end with another single knit stitch at the end of the row. I do want to give you a heads up that you can use any shape loom you have as long as it has 32 consecutive pegs. Alright, without further ado, let's start with the cast on, and we're going to use an E-wrap cast on of those 32 pegs. Using a single strand of worsted weight yarn, I want you to secure the yarn to the anchor peg, and you can go in either direction, right to left or left to right. You're going to wrap completely those 32 pegs. So start on peg 1 and continue wrapping all of those pegs, and it should look like this. Once you've reached that peg 32, because we're knitting flat, you're going to turn around and go in the opposite direction. And so I want you to do like a figure 8 and turn around and wrap that next peg, and then just wrap now all of the pegs in the opposite direction. Once you're on peg 1 again, then just hold on to your working yarn, take your hook and put it under that bottom loop, take the bottom loop over the top and knit off, and then just continue to knit off all of those bottom loops until you're back at peg 32. Now I'm using this E-wrap cast on because it works better for me when I'm ready to tighten that first row, but you could use any cast on that works for you, say the crochet cast on or any, that's fine. Alright, once you knit off peg 32, you are done with your cast on and you're ready for rows 1 and 2, which are super easy because all you're going to do is knit the row. So take the working yarn and pull on it right here to tighten your stitch, and then turn around because we're knitting flat, and we're going to put the working yarn over the existing loop and then take the bottom loop over the top and knit off. Now as you can see, I placed my yarn flat because in this direction that's the version of the knit stitch that I prefer, but you could use the U, which I'll show you later, and you can also use the true. Alright, but right now I want to take this moment to say thank you to Carol Maple from Promise Learning ATL, Barbara Ledger, Penny Pitchard, Lori Shaw, Joel Getterman, and Kristen Stone for covering the cost of closed captioning. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it big time. Alright, so you're done with this row, right? And now I'm going to turn around, and when I go in this direction, personally, I prefer to use the U-wrap version of the knit stitch. And for this one, you wrap the peg halfway and then knit off. And this one is just a little looser than the other, but you could use, like I said, any version with the exception of the E-wrap. So you can half wrap or place the yarn loosely over the bottom loop. You lay it flat, and that's the flat version. Alright, once you're done with those 2 rows, you're then ready for row 3, and for this row you're going to knit your edge, and then you're going to do a knit 1, purl 8, knit 1, stitch, repeat, and then you're going to knit the last stitch. Alright, so we're going to start with that knit 1 for your edge, and then start right here. You're going to then start the stitch pattern by doing a knit 1. Then you're going to take your yarn and put it under the existing loop. and this is going to be the start of your purl. So scoop up the yarn to create a new loop, take the old loop off, put the new one on, and pull. This is how you do your purl stitch. So let's do that 8 times in total, right? You put the yarn under the existing loop, scoop up to create a new loop, take the old loop off, put the new loop on, and pull. Scoop up, create a new loop, take the old one off, put the new one on, and pull. And now you're doing another knit stitch. So the 10 stitches that you're going to repeat are a knit 1, purl 8, knit 1, knit 1, purl 8, knit 1, and then you're going to end with a knit stitch at the end. Now we're ready for row 4, where you're going to knit your edge, and then you're going to do a knit 1, purl 8, knit 1 until the last stitch. Alright, so you're knitting your edge, and then I want to tell you that I made a boo-boo here on that knit 1 right there. I'm going to be showing you a purl, but really I needed you to do a knit, so please excuse the error. After knitting your edge, you're going to do that knit 1 and then the purl 8. So you guys already know how to do a purl stitch. You take your hook and scoop up the yarn to create a new loop, take the old loop off, put the new loop on, and pull, and then you do that last knit stitch. So your 10 stitches that you're going to repeat are your knit 1, purl 8, knit 1, then again knit 1, purl 8, knit 1, and do that 1 knit stitch, which is your edge. And remember, those edges, they're always knit stitches. And then you are ready for rows 5 through 10, where you're going to knit the edge, then knit 1, purl 2, knit 4, purl 2, and knit 1. So you guys already know we're going to knit the edge, right? So right here, always tighten your yarn before you turn to go in the opposite direction. And then after that edge, you knit 1. Then we're going to do 2 purl stitches right here. And then you're going to follow up with 4 knit stitches. And remember that in this direction, I just have a preference for the flat stitch. Just seems to go faster for me and easier, and there's very little difference between those 2 stitches. All right, you're going to follow that by 2 more purl stitches right here, and then 1 knit stitch. And that's your 10 stitches that you're going to repeat, right? Knit 1, purl 2, and then knit the 4 stitches, and then purl 2, knit 1. You're going to repeat that again, right? Knit 1, purl 2, knit 4, purl 2, knit 1, and then your 1 knit stitch is your last stitch. Now you're ready for rows 11 and 12, which look exactly like 3 and 4, where you're going to knit your edge, then knit 1, purl 8, knit 1, repeat it until the last stitch, and then you knit your edge stitch. All right, you guys already know how to do this, so I'm going to just have you watch me while you listen to this funky little song. Now don't forget that you have to repeat those 10 stitches 2 more times until the last stitch, where you're going to do that knit stitch, and then you're ready for rows 13 through 300, where you're going to repeat rows 1 through 12 24 more times for a total of 300 rows. What do I mean when I say repeat 1 through 12 24 times? I mean, one repeat is rows 1 through 12. Then your second repeat 1 through 12, and you do this. You repeat 1 through 12 24 times if you want to, right? You don't have to do that. You can do 24 or you could do less. You should do them in blocks of 12. and you have to consider the fact that you're going to stay with the same number of stitches, those 32 stitches. So here's the pattern again. You're knitting the first and last peg, and you're repeating those 10 stitches 3 more times. What might change because you have a person that's taller, needs a longer scarf, a shorter person needs a shorter scarf. So you do those 12 rows, you repeat them as you need them, right? Depending on the size of your recipient, the scarf should be the same height, the same length as the person receiving the scarf. To help you with the math, 10 stitches gives you 2.5 inches in width. 12 rows gives you 2.5 inches in length. Now we're ready for the last 2 rows. In my case, it was row 301 and 302. You're going to just knit your pegs. So you're just doing 2 rows of knit stitches. Remember, I like to use flat in one direction and you wrap in the other. And don't don't overthink it. Just when you're done with the last 2 rows, those 2 rows are knit stitches. And then you're ready for the cast off. And I'm going to be using the basic bind off. You can use any bind off that you'd like. I found this one worked really good. All right, let's start. First, I want you to find the middle peg. So you're going to count off 16, right? Because we're at 32. So you go to peg 16, and the reason we're doing this is because if my stitches get too tight when I'm doing the cast off, I'm going to show you how to do a little hack. All right, so let's go back to those first 2 pegs, because the bind off is always worked over 2 pegs, and we're going to wrap them both. This is what we do at the beginning. You wrap those 2 pegs, then you knit them off. And we're going to take the loop off the second peg after you knit them off. And you're going to bring it over to that first peg. And go ahead and tighten that loop. Knit off. And then you're going to take that loop off peg 1 over to peg 2. Now you've cast off that first peg. It has no loop. And now we have 2 new pegs. These are the ones we're going to be working on, but this time you're only going to wrap 1 peg, the second peg. You don't wrap the first one, you only wrap the second. Then you knit off, you take the loop off the second peg and bring it over to peg 1. You tighten your loop, take the bottom loop over the top, knit off, take that loop off peg 1 over to peg 2, and now you have 2 pegs that you've cast off, right? And now we're going to work the next 2 pegs, but just like before, you're only going to wrap the second peg, okay? And then you take your bottom loop over the top and knit off, take the peg off, the loop off peg 2, put it on peg 1, tighten that stitch, knit off, and take the loop off of 1 and put it on 2. So you're going to continue to do this process, and you see how it's looking pretty good already. But like I said, what I want to do is once I get to the middle is take a look at my fabric and make sure that it's not too tight, because if it is, I'm going to hack the process. So once I have reached that midpoint, then I take a good look at my fabric to see if it's just too tight. In my case, it looks perfect. I don't need to do the hack, but say it was too tight and I needed it to get a little wider, then what I would do is I would wrap these 2 pegs. Well, first I would take the marker off that second peg. It was there to make sure that I stop, inspect my fabric, see how it looks. If I needed to, then instead of wrapping only the second peg, I would wrap both pegs. What this does is it gives it a little give. It kind of widens this section, but as you can see, it looks great, and it's going to look even better once I stretch those stitches. So since I'm super happy with it, I'm just going to wrap the second peg and go on with the traditional way of doing the bind off, just as I've been doing all along, right? All right, now I'm on the last 2, I'm going to wrap that second peg, knit off, take it to that first peg, and knit off. And people have different ways of ending this last peg here. I knit off, then I pull it off just a little, so I know that it's not going to just pull off when I cut my working yarn. So I cut the working yarn and then I pull it out, and that's it. And you see how nice my edges look. Now it's time to stretch your stitches, and this is crucial. You cannot skip it. You need to stretch the fabric on the scarf from top to bottom. You see how different it looks. Once you stretch it, it has a whole different look. And by the way, you're looking at fabric that hasn't been blocked. That's another part of making the scarf look really good. You have to stretch your stitches, and then you have to block your fabric. But first, I have loose stitches from the cast on, right? So you see right here, I had started to pull on it, and then I decided I wanted to do a video so you could see how I tighten the stitch. And the first thing I do is I look for that cast on, when I first secured the yarn to the anchor peg. So there's a little knot here. I want to take that knot off, and I want to pull this string out of these first loops, because actually when I finish, it's going to prevent me from being able to pull the string. So I take it out of this sort of knot that it's in, and you see right here where I pull it, it's not going to unravel it. It's just going to allow me, and you see that it's not in a key loop, right? The project is not going to unravel because I did this. So I pull it out just so you can see that it's going to let me pull off of the excess yarn at the end, and I'll show you. But for now, I start with the loop that's all the way on the other end, right? From where the cast on started, and I pull on those loops. And when you pull on a loop, it'll show you where the next one is that you have to pull. But you see how right away you start to see how much better this looks without all this excess yarn. So you just pull the next loop. And I'll tell you this, you don't have to wait till the end to do this, because if you've never done this before, this could be nerve-wracking. So you could do it midway through the project, or you can even test this technique on a swatch, like a small sample before you do a huge project. Because if you spent days and days doing this and then, you mess it up, it'll be heartbreaking. All right, so now you see that once you tighten, both ends are going to look the same. They're going to be the same width, and they're going to look just as good on both sides. See, it looks great. So again, just pull on one loop. When you pull on one, the other one will move, and immediately you'll see which is the next loop that you need to pull on. And I kind of went a little off camera here. Things are a little blurry. I haven't been able to get my studio set up like it used to be, so excuse that. But you can clearly see that I'm pulling all of that excess yarn through that last peg, right? And I showed you how I was moving it. And so now I create a loop at this end. I pull all that excess through it, and I create a knot. And you can see it right here where I made the knot right there. Okay, and that yarn is now secure. I'm going to weave it in a little bit, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Make sure that you again block the fabric, right? I'm going to use steam blocking. There's something called wet blocking. So if you don't have a iron with steam or some kind of steaming tool, then you can wet block. And Kristen from Good Knit Kisses has a great video about wet blocking, but I prefer this one. It's much faster. I'm done today. I don't have to wait till tomorrow. I mean, you sit it, right? But the shaping is done. Now I want you to see what it looks like when you don't block it. It's just a whole other world. Depending on the fabric, sometimes I even touch it with my iron. It's on a low setting because remember, this is acrylic. So if I overdo it, it'll just turn into plastic and ruin the item. So only do this if you're used to doing it and you know not to get carried away. But I want to show you the difference in the fabric. Look how it drapes. I mean, it's just a whole other world. See how this just looks crunchy and just not done. While this one flows, it feels amazing, and the stitch pops out. It just looks so much better. Blocking, very, very important. Once you're done with your blocking, it's time to weave in the ends. So you can use a lot of different tools to weave in the end. Most of us have a crochet hook, so I'm going to show you how to do it with a crochet hook. Usually I use a latch, which I discovered when I was working on a project with the Hook Nook. She had a really cool tool, but it's discontinued, so now I use a rug latch, I think it's called. But anyway, you need to weave in your ends, so you find some of the loops kind of hidden, and normally what I do is I go in one direction, right, feeding that yarn through it, and then I'll turn around and go in the opposite direction. And once I feel that, try to get this in really nicely, right? Don't just, okay, I'm done, and cut it. You need to get it through enough loops where when you wash this, the yarn doesn't come out. So I feed it through here, like I said. Then I basically turn around in the opposite direction, feed it through a couple of loops, and then cut it. And it's set. All right, so just do this on both sides, at the cast on and the cast off, and that's basically weaving in your ends. All right. By the way, I added fringes to my project, and basically all I did was cut up some strings, take my crochet hook and put it through the loop, and take the string, fold it in half, and the part that looks kind of like a little loop, with my crochet hook, I pulled it through that loop halfway, and then brought like the little leg part in through that loop and tightened it. There's a whole lot of videos on how to add fringes to your project, and I didn't want to make this video any longer, so those are the basics. And like I said, there's loads of videos on how to add. That's it, guys. Here is a swatch in a different color, because I think this stitch pattern is so cool and it looks great in any color. So here's a big contrast to that burgundy, this soft blue, and this is a clip of the video where I just did only the stitch pattern. But I hope you guys enjoy this project. I am going to do one of the matching hats, so stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share the video, because it helps me a lot. All right, guys, until the next project. All right, when you come back and you loom with me.